Hello, and welcome to this screencast that will hopefully give you some tips and tricks for developing your cover letters, resumes, and working on your future mock interviews. When it comes to interviewing and preparing for any type of job situation, there are so many different factors to consider, and I wanted to go through just a few of those today to hopefully give you some coaching on how to handle these situations and how to interpret your sense of self in a way that is most appropriate for the job position you are looking for. Now, whenever I teach this class live, we tend to have a brainstorming session where I stand in front of the whiteboard at the front of the classroom and just say, "Hi, what do you all think will be important for the job interview process?" And as they write or suggest things, I put them on the board, and they might suggest anything from showering that morning to getting a good night's sleep before, to researching the company, to scheduling fake interviews just for the sake of practice. But regardless of what they suggest, as long as it's a valid suggestion, it hits the board, and on average, we can fit something like a 12-foot long whiteboard full of things to consider when developing cover letters, resumes, and preparing for interviews. So needless to say, it's quite a wide field in this world. You can research this very easily. You can Google it and go to someplace like Monster or any other major job website, and they'll have tons of resources for what their particular people are looking for. But as I mentioned in the opening post for this semester, for this particular course, one of the job skills that our employers look for the most, one of the top three, is generally a solid base in communication skills. The reason that they do this is, or ask for this, is they can train you how to do the job. But they typically do not have the resources to train you to have a engaging personality or to be able to speak eloquently in front of groups of people, to play well with others. These are all skill sets that are required in our jobs nowadays, but they don't necessarily have the resources at that particular position to train you how to have those. So whenever people ask me why communication is an excellent field to get into, my general response is because this is something that your job is not going to teach you. You walk in there having this and you're going to be more successful. So that said, what I want to do today is to give you a few tips on how to match your cover letter, resume, and personality to the job you're applying for, because no basic cover letter will fit all positions. I'm going to talk a little bit about the nonverbal aspect of interviewing, how you can act, how you can dress, good ways to answer questions, and then a couple of pieces of information about what to do post-interview. So to begin, the first item of coaching that I give most of my students is to match your cover letter, resume, and personality to the language that the job position was written in. So if you found a job position online, whether it's for this class or for real, and you're looking for what to do post-graduation or right now, one of the things you have to look at is how is it written? Is it a job description that's using words like dynamic and radical and teamwork, and there's the 8 exclamation points at the end of the sentence? Well, then that should give you a few clues on how you can write your cover letter and resume. I will never recommend that you use 8 exclamation points anywhere, but you can write with slightly more informal language, more upbeat, perky type of language, because that is what they're looking for. If you find a job opening that requires 5 letters of recommendation, formal 3-step or 3-stage interview process is written with absolutely perfect professional APA or MLA formatting, then that indicates to you that everything from your personality to your writing style is going to have to match that as well. So one of the things that I do whenever I'm looking for or looking at a job description is I find the job description and I kind of get my highlighter. I'm a teacher, so I have highlighters everywhere. And what I do is I highlight what I consider to be the key indicator words. Words like dynamic, thriving, new. Sometimes they're looking for things that are more typical, like technologically proficient. That's one you see a lot. But I want to look at all their adjectives. How did they describe their own job? Is it a warm environment? Is it an exciting environment? That's one of the big buzzwords we see in a lot of job descriptions nowadays. look for any of those descriptors, and I just highlight the descriptors in the entire job description so I can get a feel for what is it asking for. Is it more somber and professional and sedate, or is it one of those where you can imagine the open floor plan with like the, I would say, rave music going on in the backgrounds and everybody's bicycling their way to their office or cubicle. So you're going to be able to pick up for that feel as you read through. I always advise printing off job descriptions, highlighting and annotating them for the themes and the just general feel for the language. And then what I do is I typically take that list of keywords and I put that into my cover letter. So if the cover letter is going to match, it has to, quite frankly, match. You don't want to quote or steal or paraphrase, but you want to make sure that your level of vocabulary and descriptors matches the indicator words in the job description. So if I'm applying for a position somewhere that says seeking upbeat individual with the ability to multitask in a dynamic environment, then upbeat, multitask, dynamic are going to be the three indicator words that I would highlight and then bring into my cover letter. So then with my cover letter, when I'm writing it, I would say I am a very engaged, socially engaged individual, comfortable working independently or in groups, and prefers a highly active working environment. I have experience doing this based off So you kind of just take those indicators and blend them in a new way into how you design your cover letter, which is why your cover letters should always be tailored to the particular position you apply for. Now, along with that, another thing that you can think about when writing your cover letters would be please be as specific as is humanly possible. Too often, what I get in a cover letter is a carbon copy of their resume. So their resume will have these skills, and their cover letter just says, I have these skills. Why would they read the cover letter if they have the resume? The cover letter should echo the resume, but not be a copy and paste from it. The cover letter is where you explain where you received those skills, where you mention how you earned those accolades or rewards. The more specific you can be, the better your cover letter will be. So if I was writing my cover letter saying that I'm an upbeat individual, comfortable in an active environment at work, then I would need to say, for example, in my previous position at I entitled myself to work with this particular group of people with this personality set with this type of background. So if I'm trying to tell them that, yes, I'm upbeat, active environments, dynamic, then I have to provide an example for where I have utilized and successfully utilized those skills. So match the tempo of the job description, look for the indicator words and structure of language, and then write your cover letter as an echo of your resume that is more specific to what you did to get those skills. One of the corrections I make the most whenever I'm analyzing people's resumes is their resume will just be a list of certifications. And for some positions, that might actually be helpful. They're looking for those certifications, so it's good. But your cover letter should kind of come in there to explain what you did with those certifications. Why were you the one recommended to receive those certifications? Did you volunteer for that particular training, or did your boss come to you and say, since you've had 6 perfect evaluations in the past year, we think that we would like to fund you to go to these trainings? That's so huge to put in there. Put something in there. We have a 1,500 employee company, and I was chosen to receive this additional training. It's pretty amazing. The next thing that you kind of want to look for if you are not getting a lot of information, excuse the cat in the background, it's coronavirus time in my household, so animals are everywhere. Whenever you are kind of researching, if you feel like you've read the job description and haven't received everything that you're looking for, the next thing you can do would be to make a phone call and communicate with the company directly. And the way that they answer the phone and the way that they choose to answer your questions is going to provide you with a great amount of insight on how your particular resume, cover letter, and interview are going to go. If you call this company and say something like, "Hi, my name is Ellen. I have applied for a position here. I would like to know a little bit of information about your interview process." And if they say, "Oh, that's fantastic. We're so looking forward to having new team members. We're such a fun place to be. Don't worry about the interview," then still worry about the interview. But that should be your clue that it's going to be more of an informal process. Still research the company and be comfortable with who you're talking with. Try to always get your interviewer's name, and just you can still do the typical anxiety managing strategies, but you know that it's going to be more of a relaxed environment. If they call and say, "Unfortunately, we do not share our interview process due to confidentiality concerns," then that should indicate that you need to do some serious prepping before you go to that one, and that you should be dressed as formally as possible, and your language should match that level of formality. Now, when it comes to formality versus informality, my general rule of thumb is always be more formal than is necessary. It is much easier for a company to look at you and say, "Thank you for being so formal, but you can relax here," as opposed to looking at you and going, "Wow, they didn't even try," or "They don't look like someone who would work here." Two examples I can give from personal family. One is my brother. He interviewed for a position about a year ago and received it, and he interviewed exceptionally professionally, full business suit, collar, tie, got his first professional haircut as opposed to having his wife do it. And they said, "You look fantastic. That's wonderful. But we have a really casual dress code here. As long as you meet these needs, you're fine. So you don't have to worry about dressing this formally on Monday," which was really easy for him. It gave him permission to adjust his wardrobe accordingly, and he has continued to do so. The other example I can give is from me personally. As you can tell from my particular screencasts, I like bright colors. I do enjoy wearing makeup. I can't tell if you can tell in the webcam, but I actually have mermaid colored hair where it goes from blue to teal to green. That's not just some weird refractive light. And I love being colorful, but that is because it is acceptable in both of the jobs that I hold. I mentioned I worked before at ETSU and at King University, and both of them are very comfortable with that level of colorful expression. However, note, whenever I interviewed for these positions, I did not have colorful hair. I had neutral toned makeup and I had neutral toned clothing, and I maintained that neutrality for probably the first, I'd say, 5 years of me working at ETSU, and definitely for the first 3 of me working at King. And I didn't do that to quash my personal creativity. I've never really been that concerned about personal expression. It's never been something that I really worry about too much. I know that I'm myself, and that's good enough for me. However, what I did was respect my surroundings. I would not ever, and you are welcome to disagree with me, but I would not ever walk into a job interview at a university with blue hair, heavy makeup, and bright colors. While that is me, that does not have a huge impact on my teaching or my ability to teach. Yes, it is an extension of myself. It's an extension of myself I really like, but it does not add to my teaching. The fact that I'm wearing hot pink right now has no impact on the way I'm conducting this screencast. So it shouldn't have an impact on how you interview. Now, of course, match yourself to the job. If your job is at a really modern hair salon that you're interviewing for, or if it's a really new company that really wants personal expression, then the more personal expression, the better. But you have to suit your nonverbals to match the position you're researching. If you don't do that, you could mess up the ability for you to get that position. Again, in higher education, it's typically more liberal and more comfortable with expression diversity. So I could have been very comfortable having blue hair in an interview. However, that was something that I did with permission as the job continued, and I had proven myself for several years, so they knew that it wasn't going to have an impact on my work ethic. So those are just a couple of examples of how things can go. I would advise that you evaluate your job and yourself very carefully and decide if a position quashes your personal creativity, if it is worth you having. That is definitely an assessment. Just because something comes with good money doesn't mean that it's the best thing if it makes you unhappy in yourself. I am an instructor and I love teaching. I will never do anything else, I hope. I completely enjoy what I do. and I don't get paid anything to do it. It has nothing to do with the money whatsoever. It has everything to do with the love of people and the love of communication, which is why I'm still here. So when it comes to, again, formality and informality, that should go with the way that you dress, with the way that you style yourself, and additionally, the way that you hold yourself in the actual interview. So once you get to that interview process, you need to do a check when it comes to your posture, to where your hands go, to where your neck goes. All of those are indicators of either fear or confidence. And humility is something you do want to go for in many interviews, but humility does not mean quiet or incapable. It means that you know what you are capable of doing. You are willing to discuss how good you are at your job, but you are not discussing it with arrogance. So that turns into how you hold yourself in the interview. Whenever I interview, I have a tendency to just sit straight on. I lift my shoulders for that posture effect. Opening up your rib cage allows you to get more oxygen, which is very key. And then I give my hands a home. That is the phrasing I always use. Give your hands a home. For the sake of webcamming, I'm going to hold them up here. Some people have their hands like this. They might do this. Some people steeple. Whenever you do steepling, that actually is more of a confidence play. You'll see more politicians and millionaires do this than anybody else, and you can interpret for yourself whether or not that's a good thing. But steepling is typically a dominance display. Hands like this is typically more relaxed because whenever we do this, typically we start gripping, and so you're going to start getting some knuckles going on there. The blood flow might constrict, and another thing is you'll probably get sweaty palms. So I generally settle for this one, but you can do what is comfortable for you. And when I'm not talking, my hands are still. If you're the type of person that bounces a leg whenever you're nervous, that is another thing to bring your awareness to and calm it down. Whenever I begin answering a question, I have two specific things that I do. One is I pause. When I'm asked a question, I pause and give it about 3 seconds worth of thought. When nervous or under pressure, we tend to just launch right into a question or an answer immediately because we're trying to look smart and capable and that we know all this stuff. And what ends up happening is we end up making our questions or our answers about 3 times as long as they need to be because we're stumbling around in the circle trying to get our thoughts where we want them to go. So I generally pause for 3 seconds. So that would be ask a question like, what do you bring to this company? And I would go, what I feel I bring to this company would be. So I give myself 3 seconds to breathe, collect my thoughts, let my brain kind of get on ahead of me, and then I'm able to start answering a specific kind of concise, more direct answer that sounds more prepared. There will be less ums and ers and stumbles and repetitiveness. So giving yourself a 3-second pause is okay. I can assure you that your interviewer is going to be more interested in having a good response than a fast response. Now, if you know the answer, then just launch in, but generally give yourself some breathing room. The second thing that I do whenever I'm asked a question in an interview is that I make eye contact for the first 5 seconds of me answering that question. Because I'm on camera here so I can see what I'm doing. Let's say that you ask me a question like, what is 49 times 32? I'm going to go, if you already saw me while I was asking that question, my eyes went click, click. Whenever we don't know the answer to a question or unsure what comes next, our eyes are going to pop off to a certain corner. We're going to break that eye contact because we're accessing different areas of our brain trying to get the answer. So if you ask me a question like, what do you bring to this company? And I go, I think what I bring to the company is, then you can see confusion and uncertainty all over my nonverbals, and that's going to communicate a lot. Trained interviewers generally look for your nonverbals just as much, if not more, than the actual answers you give. They're rating your body posture and your confidence. Just think of it. The more money the job is worth, the more trained the interviewers are. So, whenever I'm asked a question, even if I'm not certain of the answer, again, I'm going to give myself my 3-second pause, and then I'm going to lock eyes. I'm going to look at my webcam for this emphasis here. I'm going to lock eyes with that person as I begin to answer the question, and I'm going to put a general smile on my face and a little bit of comfort there so I'm not looking terrified while I'm having this question. And I look and I smile and I just start answering it slowly and confidently. And after about 5 seconds of starting to answer that question, now I can break my eye contact to gather my thoughts and then come back to the conversation. So there are just 2 little tricks there that you can use. Pausing and eye contact are pretty, I would say, when I interview people, probably in my top 5. That's what I'm looking for, because again, I can teach you what I need you to do to work for me, but I need to see how you're going to adapt. How do you handle when you're nervous and under pressure? So that's what I'm judging, is I'm judging your nonverbals. So during the interview, work on your posture. I always recommend keeping your shoulders up so you open that rib cage and get some good oxygen. I recommend your hands having a home. I recommend your eye contact has intent. You don't want to be too intimidating with your eye contact, but it does need to be consistent. When I was in college, I got a job that paid $18 an hour simply because I locked eyes with the interviewer. It was a group interviewer, and we had 5 people in that room, and I watched him as he was getting around to me. He was asking each person the same question and then just staring them down. So I went, oh, I'm a communication student. I know what you're doing. So I locked eyes with him, and I never broke eye contact the entire time. And afterwards, he told me that's what got me the job, because I had picked up on what he was doing and I answered. Hey, that's about the only time I would say that strong eye contact like that would be helpful. When it comes to the post-interview process, whether this is a mock interview or for real, I really do recommend that you do 2 things. One of them is networking and the other is thanking. You should always follow up with a separate thank you. We always thank you at the interview as you leave, but you need to follow up with an additional thank you, whether or not you get the job. You respond with a thank you for your time. I appreciate you interviewing and working with me today. It has been a pleasure to work with this particular company. And if you do get the job, then you can say, oh, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm really excited about this. What did I do well in the interview? Get feedback. Have them tell you, oh yeah, we totally hired you because of eye contact, or you looked relaxed, or your answers were really well spoken. Try to get that feedback so you can know what to use again. Another thing that you could do with your thank yous, especially if you don't get the job, is to thank them and ask, what could I have done better? What could I have done to suit myself more effectively for this position? And sometimes they'll tell you it was just a matter of experience. Sometimes they'll tell you, well, you looked really nervous, or you didn't have answers to these really key questions. And that gives you guidance for future interviews. That's why this course requires one. The last thing that I would encourage you to do is to network, especially if you do not get the job. If you do not get the position, then you thank them and ask for feedback, but then you're going to ask, are you aware of a position that I might be suited for? And whether or not it's with this company, I really enjoyed speaking with you all the other day, and this seems like something I'd like to be a part of. Is there another area that you are aware of that I could possibly be a good fit for? And that interviewer is going to be able to say, well, we're not hiring right now, but we'll hold your resume because I do think that you might be a good fit for this position. Or they might say, well, no, you're not going to be a good fit here, but there is a company, and their interviewers, and I heard that they were hiring the other day. Maybe you could look there. And when you do this networking, whether or not you get the position, that kind of helps you build communication with these people that are the ones making the decisions. And I have done this. My mother taught me to do that very early in my teens. Was anytime you hear no, graciously thank them and then ask for guidance for the next place. And they will recommend you and recommend you and recommend you. And that's actually how I got my position here as an adjunct instructor. I had applied for a position in their learning support program that required a PhD, which I do not have, and I knew I didn't have it, but I knew I was qualified experientially to do the job, so I applied anyway. And while I didn't get that position, I said, hi, is there an area where there's a background in communication? Because I really, I enjoyed being a student at King and I'd like to give back to the community. And they said, well, yeah, the Knoxville campus is actually looking for adjunct online instructors. And here we go. So I love teaching part-time for King just to, again, work at a different institution and to have different courses and to contribute to a different student pool. But I wouldn't have gotten this without simply asking that question, is there another place that's a good fit for me? Didn't bother me at all that I didn't get the other position because I got this one. And it really is something that can work for you. So all in all, match your cover letters and resumes and personality style with the job description. Call ahead to get more information or do some hefty research on their website. You can adjust your nonverbal posture to address the comfort level of the job position you're in and the level of competence you want to show. Remember to make eye contact and be more formal than is necessary, and always remember to thank people and network. That would be my little 25-minute, unfortunately 25-minute, tips and tricks screencast for interviewing. Let me know if you have any questions.